being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah. He's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian doesn't want to see anyone else. Piss off.
That's the one. Because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian. So
Hey, Manuel Kant was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, hello everybody. Good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Late Nite Jaffe. Late Nite Jaffe. I like the ring of it. I like the ring of that. I'm happy to have you guys here tonight. I'm even happier that I have a fellow streamie in the house, Mr. Freddie Laker. Freddie is an OG, let me tell you, a big time OG. And you know what? His best years are still ahead of him. And yet it is Happy National Plan Your Epitaph Day. So I'm going to have to ask him, has he planned his epitaph? No doubt his life has been filled with resume qualities, but what are his eulogy qualities? I'm going to be very interested to find out. I hope you guys are well. I hope you have your adult beverage handy. I have mine. It's a rather large one. I think I might have supersized this particular pour. Maybe let's just say it's grape juice, because I didn't want to have to go downstairs and get another one. I mean, go from the studio to the canteen in my little virtual studio. But I hope you guys are well, and I hope you guys have bought enough Jaffe coin, because the Freddie, you got a good deal, I think, maybe initially, but it's up to $2.52. Who knows where this will lead and where this will land, but we're having fun. This is what we do with Late Nite Jaffe. We have a lot of fun. So let's keep going. Freddie Laker in the house tonight. Fanzo last night. Greg Lunsford tomorrow night. 3 9 o'clock nights, back to back. And Charisse, it's okay. You didn't need to be, to four-peat, because I think if she had gone on at 9 o'clock, then I would have to tell you that this is the new time. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I'm not really sure. But, as long as you're enjoying it, we'll keep doing it. But as I was saying today, we're going to focus on Mr. Freddie Laker. Now, Freddie is the founding partner of Chameleon Collective. We'll talk about we'll talk about chameleons, we'll talk about collectives. We'll talk about Chameleon Collectives. And truly, this man, I think I first knew of him or connected with him, or maybe, I don't know, looked up to him, coveted him, whatever, when he was back in the sapient days. He really has been on the leading and bleeding edge of innovation, of digital, of transformation, of change. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, whatever is on his mind soon enough. But first, let's do birthdays. KJ Nichols, John Scully himself, Gavin Duveen, Rain Leviton, Michael Rubin, and on LinkedIn, we've got Stuart Myler, Mike Selico, Sterling Peloso. Happy birthday to all of you, and to my niece, Sarah Levine. I think you're in London at the moment, or you might be in Israel, but I just want you to know that Uncle Joe sends his love to you, and I hope you're having a great day, or at this time, it is tomorrow, so it's not your birthday anymore, but still thinking of you over here. Well, let's get into our seated soliloquy, and there's going to be a distinct nautical theme Freddie has an amazing show, which I've been on, called Oh Ship. Let the puns continue. I had a lot of fun, intentionally messing up. Oh ship. That ship, you know what I mean, but it sailed. But I thought that this would be a nice difference today. So I want to tell you, today I learned something new. How about that? I was being interviewed for an upcoming book. It was part of a research exercise. And at the end of the 30-minute interview, the author asked me if I had any questions or if there was anything she could do for me. I asked her if she could send the recording to me. And then I explained why. I've done so many of these interviews, and I can always tell a good interview based on whether I felt I was articulate, but also if I said something original, or if the interview itself brought a new thought or build onto the table. Well, that's what happened today. I was asked about my beliefs, values, or advice, and I responded with my standard answer. Number 1, love what you do. Number 2, be true to yourself. And number 3, stay the course. The whole endurance, 10,000 hours, long game point. As the interview was all about disruption, the aha moment was the recognition that the course in question was not a linear one, a straight line, or even a predictable one. Staying the course in the age of disruption is about the mantra and the mission, as opposed to the roadmap or its path. It will involve being blown off course, several course corrections, circuitous paths, some of them dangerous, some of them scenic, some of them dead ends, but staying the course is about remaining resolute, resilient, and tenaciously focused on forward movement and momentum. Staying the course is not giving up and not giving in. Giving into popular opinion, naysayers, societal norms, and probably at the top of the list, that little nagging voice of doubt inside your own head that says, no, you can't. Yes, you can. Make no mistake, there is still a very clear, focused, and defined goal, a primary objective, and a prime directive. That doesn't change. There's still a North Star that will lead the way and help triangulate the ability to stay true to oneself and the original goal. Keep your eyes on the prize. And along the way, serendipity, randomness, beginner's luck, and dumb luck may open up a whole new set of possibilities. And you never know, maybe, just maybe, an entirely new path, a better one that just could not have been conceived from the get-go. This was my amazing gift I received today in an interview in which I was supposedly the one doing the giving. So stay the jiggly, squiggly course and enjoy the journey, because the finish line, the goalposts, well, I think you know the rest. Well, someone who no doubt has hit that finish line, exceeded the goal, raised the bar, broken the records, and no doubt not only plotted his own path, but maybe a path for many others that have followed him to be able to follow in his wake and his example. He sent me a very, very brief bio. Freddie Laker is a serial entrepreneur who has been creating internet-related ventures since the mid-90s. He's built an ISP, a digital agency, one of the world's earliest internet radio stations, a text-to-video company, and most recently, Chameleon Collective, a business transformation company that works closely with the PE and VC world. And this is all before his 30th birthday. Can you believe it? He's so young. Please welcome him onto the show, Mr. Freddie Laker. Welcome.
It was 22nd birthday. It was 22nd birthday, actually. I'll take 30.
22nd. I mean, it's now we've done the role reversal, right? I've been on your show, you've been on my show.
I love it. I love it. I think it's nice to go to someone else. It's like going to someone else's house. I can drink all their booze and eat all their food, and I just go home. I guess I can do the same equivalent, but on your show now.
Well, I tell you what, you can't drink. You can't drink this monstrosity of a. I don't even know what it. I don't know why I poured it so heavily, but my wife said, "You know that that's like a can of Coke," and I said, "Well, I guess it is. I guess it is."
Live on the edge. You could do that. It's
So,
your
Mister,
show.
yeah, I suppose it is. I suppose it is. So we've got a lot to cover tonight. And first, I don't know if you saw when I posted the little image. I was having a little bit of fun
I,
because who
I
is
did
this
notice
Freddie
that.
Laker?
The other Laker. I'll take it.
So tell us about Sir Freddie Laker. Who's named
Um,
after whom?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, my father was a chap called Sir Freddie Laker. Obviously, we have the same name. Technically, his name was Frederick Alfred Laker, so somebody he used to joke I was the real Freddie Laker. But my father was famous for a couple things. One was he was the first father of low-cost airlines, basically, a low-cost aviation. So, a lot of us today, we fly on Southwest, we fly on JetBlue, we fly on all these similar types of airlines, EasyJet, whatever, and it's did we take it for granted? Well, before that, in the up until the late 70s and really the early 80s, all government pricing, all airline pricing was controlled by the government. So they'd say, look, when you fly between New York and Miami, or sorry, London and New York, you have to fly at these certain rates, and it really kind of limited competition because back then, frankly, a lot of the airlines were even owned by the government, something we take for granted today as well. So Dan basically fought his way into effectively starting the deregulation of the aviation industry and allowing him to set whatever price he want. So when he came out of nowhere, he took over a huge chunk of traffic across the Atlantic. I think at one point it was like 11% of all flights between New York and London were on a Laker plane out of nowhere. Grew up to 30 plus jets in a matter of a couple of years. And then the second thing he was famous for was when all the major airlines effectively colluded against him to put him out of business rather quickly. And then he sued them in what became one of the largest aviation antitrust cases of all time. So, for people in England, they knew about the airline, but they also knew he was on the TV every day with this kind of fighting all these big companies, and he was perceived as very much kind of like a David versus Goliath thing because back then everyone else wanted to charge people whatever 400 or 500 pounds to get across Atlantic. He was charging 99 pounds, and I think that the little guy out there felt that he was fighting for them and he was fighting against all the big boys out there, which is actually what he was knighted for. I think the exact wording was something along the lines of like for allowing the common
Unbelievable.
man to travel.
And then of course the third thing is the LA Lakers is named after.
Exactly.
so so
I'll
so
tell you a quick funny story on that.
yeah.
It was so, Dad's not as well known now as he was when I was younger. But when I was much younger, he used to get recognized at a lot of places. And one time I introduced myself and I was very nice to meet you. I'm Freddie Laker, and this woman goes to me, wow, like the Laker, and I said, well, and I guess so. And she's like, God, I love your basketball team, and I just had to look at her and go, thank you. Thank you very much. It was a good lesson of humility that day.
So Bob Farnham is here, and he said, "What an amazing story! It is. It's a crazy story, and clearly, this is a family of underachievers. So what are you going to do? Well, talking about being mischaracterized or identified incorrectly. I was looking around and I was like, wait a second. In that Rolling Stone article, I was like, this is not the same person, right?
Hair, man. I miss the hair. I do anything with the hair. I
I
see. You see that
cannot. I
baby face.
cannot. I cannot. I can't. I've tried.
So
I
see
mean,
that baby face I've got in the hair. So when I went to the shaved head thing, first I shaved the head, but I still had the baby face. So I had no beard. And my wife basically, after about a month, she's like, "You look like a big crying baby head." I'm like, "Thank you, sweetheart." She's like, "You should grow a beard." And I think I started that day. So that's how I migrated from the hair up here to the hair here and maybe a little bit on my shoulders too.
Well, I will tell you, and I will not mention whom for two reasons. One, I don't remember, and two, she was female. But someone commented on you in the OSHIP interview and said that is a seriously, seriously good-looking man.
Wow, I'll
Um,
take it.
so
Damn, I didn't know that. Thanks.
so
I need all the help I can get these days, so thank you.
like a good wine, like a good neighbor, like a good wine, you get better with age, my
Yeah,
friend.
keep drinking that wine. I'll take all the compliments like that I can
I'm
get.
telling you, this episode brought to you by Cabernet Sauvignon. Um, all right, well, we're not done embarrassing you yet, because there are some more fun facts. If you weren't already fascinated by the man, be a little bit more fascinated because, I mean, you just have to tell the story. You did the
Oh
Gumball
man.
Rally in 2007.
So
I
I got
just tell.
if I'll tell the quick setup for it. So I randomly became very good friends with a guy called Steve Schimmel, and Steve was the 13th employee of Google. And Steve and I became friends just around the time that he was getting divorced, and this is quite a few years ago. And he and I were hanging out in San Francisco, and this was right after like the Jackass guys had done Gumball. Gumball had only been around like 7 years or something. For those of you who don't know what Gumball is, it's a 100 car, basically semi-legal rally car race, typically across an entire continent in 7 or 8 days. And just like that movie, The Cannonball Run or whatever, it's crazy like that. People driving fake police cars and zany buses and all kinds of stuff. And so I told Steve about it, and Steve basically called me up and said, "I've been thinking we should do that Gumball Rally thing." And I said, "Look, man, I love you. I've done pretty well, but I haven't done that well. It's out of my league." And he's like, "I'll tell you what, I'll cover the entry and I'll ship my car to Europe. You just have to pay all the bar tabs, and you have to make sure I have a good time." I was like, I can handle that. And so basically, he and I went and did this crazy race. Started in London, went basically to the Asian side of Turkey, and all the way back to London, 3,600 miles in 8 days. It was insane. And it's a miracle we finished. So we actually won an award called the Against All Odds Award, which was pretty much summed up our whole trip. But it was, man, it was
I
awesome.
mean,
It takes me an hour and a half to tell the full story. It is literally a movie script. It's
we're
insane.
gonna have to bring you back so you can tell the whole story. But I mean, I mean, I remember when I was younger, obviously, watching Cannonball Run and just
It was one of my favorite things when I was a kid.
I
Yeah,
loved that movie, and I loved just the star power of that movie.
yeah,
You just were below. I mean, it was like I guess it was the whole Rat Pack pretty much
yeah.
in that
It was. I
movie.
mean, it felt like as close to as a modern version of that as you can. I maintained friends with a couple of those chaps, including the guy with the fake Italian police car, called Alex Roy, who's totally bonkers, and you should have him on. You should have him on your show at some point because he's great
Oh,
fun.
I would love that. I still remember that, Burt Reynolds, and Dom DeLuise, and,
Love Dom
in the one
DeLuise.
Cannonball
So
Run,
good.
they get an ambulance, but they need to find a doctor, and, of course, Dom DeLuise brings a proctologist, and, look, this is 9 o'clock at night, so, only adults are watching, and he goes, "Well, where are your instruments?" And he goes like this. This is the only instrument I'll need. And I think the music was dun 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 dun
That's
dun
so
dun.
good.
I mean, it's amazing how like that moment, that scene just stuck with me. But
I love
enough
it.
about proctologists. Let's talk about this so that we have one more interesting, it's not even an interesting fun fact. Um, but it certainly is an amazing story, right? How a Rolling Stone article propelled one entrepreneur's career. So tell us about this part of, and
This,
that's where I found, Babyface.
this is one of my favorite stories. It basically, yeah, it's my whole, even though you'd think, again, given some of my background, that I might have taken a certain path to my career, the reality is there was an incredible amount of luck that was involved in it. One of those things was this thing called the womb. So when I was young, I've always loved house music or electronic music, And it was much bigger in England in the kind of 90s than it was in the States. There wasn't much of a scene here. And I used to complain about all the bars in Miami and South Florida, and I'd say I could do better than this. And one day my friend said, if you can, just shut up and go do it. And so, 24 hours later, I kind of bought some turntables and I was teaching myself to DJ. I was a terrible DJ, but I was a DJ nonetheless. And when you're 18 years old, it's pretty much the coolest thing that's ever happened to you. Um, I had somehow BS'd my way into DJing on a totally illegal pirate radio station in Miami called The Womb, like a mother's womb. And so I had some crap slot like a 2 p.m. on a Thursday or something like that, or Tuesday. And basically, the shorter version of this is that the station got raided because it was illegal. You can't just pick a station and start broadcasting. And to get the station back on the air, we decided to start basically broadcasting it on the internet using Real Player, if you remember the Real Player days. And we came up with this idea. There's four of us involved in it. I was one of the two tech guys. And we came up with this idea of broadcasting on the internet and then getting a second transmitter. So we had two transmitters, and we had one on the north end of South Beach, one on the south end of South Beach, and we were broadcasting on the internet to both of them. Now, mind you, this wasn't about starting an internet radio station necessarily on. This was literally about how do we get the regular radio back on the air. And we made this really simple computer program that would send the signal to one antenna at a random interval and then to the other antenna, this antenna, this antenna, this antenna, this antenna. And we were using that basically to evade the police so they could never figure out where we were broadcasting from, because they had these things basically called triangulation units, and then how they try and figure out where you're broadcasting from. Now you got to remember, this is 1997. No one had ever done anything like this to the FCC ever. And so they were basically driving around in a van or a car or whatever with these little triangulation units. And in my opinion, they were going like 5 miles away, we're 3 miles away, we're a mile away, we're going to get them this time. And it'd be like, we're 11 miles away. What the hell does happen? And they were driving up and down South Beach for months trying to figure it out. And needless to say, they did figure it out. They weren't very impressed that we've been laughing about it for the last couple months. We were kids. I mean, we were 18, 19 years old. I think the oldest of us was 22. And they shut us down again. Inadvertently, during that time period, though, a bunch of people started listening to the internet, which we never dreamt would actually happen. I think it's really ironic that we didn't care about the web back then. And basically, when we got the terrestrial station got shut down, we left the internet side up. And that turned out to be, I don't know, first 5 24-hour-a-day internet radio stations in the world. We had no idea what we were doing. I didn't think we understood what we were doing, what the implications of it were, but it started growing quite quickly. And then there was this one article that came out in Rolling Stone that talked about all the earliest internet radio stations that had come out. This is now, again, like 97 or something like that. I remember Joan Osborne was on the cover. And when I always tell people, it's like, look, today, if you and I go out to dinner with a bunch of fancy, investor types or business guys or whatever, business people, they said, man, I need an expert to go help me start a business. We go, I know one, I know 3 people, and someone else will go, I know 2 people. But in 1997, it was just as the internet boom was starting to happen, and these rich guys be sitting around in New York going, I got this idea, who's going to do it? Well, I don't know anyone. But I read about this guy in Rolling Stone, and all of a sudden my phone started ringing. And that one fluke, basically, I really feel like that was the defining moment that changed the trajectory of my career, because all of a sudden, rather large businesses from Fashion TV, my first million person a month website I ever worked on, or broadcast.com, and these kind of really big groups started calling me. And if it wasn't for, I was going to say, if it wasn't because of my love of house music, I wouldn't have fluked into the Womb, and then I wouldn't have fluked into some of those early deals. And if I hadn't had those early deals, I don't think any of the other things would have come after them.
It sounds it sounds so difficult to comprehend, because you're basically saying, it's funny how I spoke about luck in my soliloquy, and you're basically saying, yeah, I got lucky, but it can't be that
Look,
simple.
you have to be able to back your BS up, but I
Okay.
think there's many brilliant people that I've met in my career that's kind of sad that they didn't break through for whatever reason. And there is a bit of luck that, does that. I've also seen other people that are brilliant and have had lucky moments, and they don't know how to seize them, or they don't see them, or they're afraid to pluck them out of the air when they happen, you know. You know, maybe I manifest some of my luck, but there's you have to be there being observant. I mean, I had something happen to me on Friday. It was something I've been looking for. I can't get into what it is specifically, and someone mentioned it in front of me, and I could have just, you know, I was an intimidating person, a very successful person, and I could have gone, I'm too scared to mention that. I simmered on it for 2 hours, and I emailed the person about, you know, seizing on that moment. And so you do have to manifest some of your own luck, but you have to be aware of what's happening around you, because opportunity presents itself all the time, and most people are too either preoccupied or too scared to seize on it,
So
in my opinion.
there's a really interesting insight here and lesson
Mm.
about self-awareness. Specifically, this idea of knowing when you have knowing when you have a moment and an opportunity, and having the ability and awareness to go for that. So it seemed like, you followed your passion. You were curious. You experimented. You did all of those things. Um,
I would also say I'm not afraid of rejection, and that's something that's really hard for a lot of people. They don't want to be embarrassed. I'm too stupid to be embarrassed. So you know, I don't mind. I've been rejected plenty of times. You have to get rejected to cut through. It's a numbers game, and so I think being okay with losing is okay. You know, what's that old thing? It's like you can't. It's like you need to try to. You know,
what does that
um,
mean? I'm too stupid to be embarrassed.
I think it's just like you know, I mean, I laugh. I mean, I said obviously with a wink and a nod, but it's like my point is, I just let it wash over me. I don't care if someone says no to me or says I don't think you're good enough, or that you're the right fit for this, or you're what we need. And I don't mind, you know, and if even if it's a public setting, I'm not afraid to speak up and potentially get rejected in front of other people. You know, I mean, obviously, I try and handle those moments with dignity and self-respect, so I don't look a fool. But I think a lot of people are really afraid of that. They're really afraid of being rejected or hearing no, or maybe even having a little bit of confrontation. Um, you know, and again, whether that's listening ignorance on my part, you know, I do, you know, kind of half joke about being stupid, or maybe I've learned how to handle it, so it doesn't hurt me. It washes over me at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Um,
also this idea in a way of being thick-skinned, um, and 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 just being able to just roll with it, right? I mean, it's an amazing story because you are you are a successful businessman. You come from success, and yet as recently as this weekend, there is you're almost that youth, right? It's like you're back at the beginning. You're back at that moment where the police are chasing you. You're back at that moment where an opportunity comes your way. And by the way, and I heard this on, I forget who it was, maybe last week, one of my guests. He said, and you know this to be true, right? Which is, you got to be the best at what you do, or the only person that does what you do. And in your particular case, whether you knew it or not, whether you liked it or not, you were just kind of like, a handful of people that happened to be doing it. And so you became the de facto expert in the field, and the rest is history.
and again, got in really early, and it helped. And the fact that I do really love what I do. It's a game for me. It's fun for me. I don't notice the hours I work frequently. But it just, you know, when you're just so lost in it, and you feel like you know, your hobby is your work. You know, it's a great place to be. And that, you know what, honestly, maybe that's part of why I don't mind losing, because even if I try something and it doesn't work out, I'm like, that was interesting. I learned something, or that was neat. I enjoyed tinkering with that. So, you know, I have lots of little failed experiments you know, when you were talking about my kind of brief bio and some of the companies I've had over the years, the reality is there may be dozens more. I'm not even sure if someone told me, like, name all the companies that you've, you know, had a little, you know, a little helping hand in along the way, or even considered starting and never even got to the point where I kind of launched them. But I mean, I frequently will get, you know, something I'm excited about, and I'll build these like little prototypes of things, or try little iterative steps to test a new business idea out. And if they fail, they fail. What I think is so interesting about the world we live in right now is that the things that I would have had to have done in the late 90s or early 2000s to birth these, let's call them technology enabled companies, was really expensive, and I needed a developer. I'm very technical, but I'm not a developer anymore. And now I feel like I can hack together, you know, a live television show, because there's incredible tools out there like StreamYard or Restream.io that make incredible levels of
Mm.
sophistication possible at hilariously inexpensive numbers. So I just feel like it's like an awesome time to be an entrepreneur, and to be able to experiment with new ideas.
I remember, you know, I, I don't know exactly what year it was. I don't remember. Um, I remember the room. It's weird. It almost looks like your room. Like it had like wood panels, almost the same cut. Maybe I was in your room. Um, but I remember being in this big room, and we were pitching a piece of business, and we knew that we were up against Sapient. And we were like, "Well, we got no chance." I mean, because you guys were the real deal. You were the essentially the 800-pound gorilla, being the best at what you did. And I have a question for you of all people, which is, it annoys me to no end um, when people say the last 12 months that what we've lived through has been, you know, digital transformation. That this time has been, you know, the chief transformation officer. And I've used this term. It's not digital transformation. What the last 12 months have meant is digital catch up. That all
Mhm.
that's really happened is that companies that were so far behind, at best, at least have caught up to to where they should have been. And who knows where the companies, you know, where the companies that were there at the beginning are now. And then the other part of it is digital acceleration, where the only acceleration that has happened is acceleration towards your demise, which is, if you were behind,
Mhm.
then that gap has just widened. Where do you sit in terms of being able to look back on the last 12 months as, you know, has this been the great equalizer, the great transformation time during this big pause? Or in fact, you know, do you side a little bit more on the side, on my side, which is, yeah, was best case scenario, all you did was attempt to catch up?
I'm going to answer that directly, but I'm also going to throw an interesting curveball at you that I was chatting about with a friend of mine last weekend that I think is really interesting. I'd love to get your reaction to. Um, so I think that a huge chunk of it is digital catch up, for those that, you know, were basically had not started their journey down this path. And let's, especially if it was a B2C business or even a B2B business, having direct to consumer channels and things like e-commerce and so on was extremely important. Or just, you know, getting massive new levels of sophistication around your digital marketing channels. I think a lot of people had to catch up really quickly or double down on their investment to move even further ahead. Um, I'm going to throw the fun curveball at you though. So you know, I've even, I think, chatted with you in the past around this idea about you know, that yes, you know, what's happened in the last 12 months has brought a bunch of laggards behind, and really made a kind of a bunch of people who can say, hey, remote work is possible and be successful and so on. But let's jump ahead a little bit. So maybe it's not about what's happening right now. Maybe this is about what's happening 10 years from now. What I mean by that is, um, my friend and I hypothesized that this what's happened in the last 12 months, 'cause we were talking about the impact on children that have grown up over the last, you know, through this period, as last 12 months. And I would say that this is the first, will be the first generation to have 99.9% digital literacy. where there may have been a chance that people were laggards before, or like these new, some kids weren't, proficient in online learning or working with computers, but because so many people went remote, even and for the first time, I think an entire generation almost got, I hate using the term indoctrinated, but I'm going to say it anyway, almost got like mass indoctrinated in technology and having to use technology to interact with each other, to learn, and so on. And so this then I think has this like snowball effect. So when you start thinking about I'm gonna call out VR very specifically, which is something that I'm really excited by. I think it's clunky and hokey in many levels today. Some great experiences, but a lot of really really clunky experiences. And if people like Facebook, who've got what 20% of their workforce at this point working on VR related businesses, if you're saying like, hey, if VR potentially is the operating system of the world of the future, where a huge number of interactions are happening, you could argue that this generation of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 year olds, whatever, I think they're going to call them Generation C, I'm now hearing, um, basically will be perfectly prepped for this jump to this next world of
Say that
computing.
again. Generation C.
Generation C is what I'm hearing they're going to start calling this generation. And so they're perfectly prepped for this kind of like net completely up leveling of what the computer world looks like, because there's never been such a huge mass fluency, literacy, and just comprehension of any prior generation. I mean, you talked about the millennials being digital natives, but there was still a healthy percentage of them that didn't get this stuff. And I think with Generation C, I mean, like I said, maybe it's 99.9% because they all had to learn it. No choice this time
We
because of the last 12 months.
so let's talk about that. I love this concept of forget about the last 12, let's talk about the next 12.
Mhm,
So we could talk about the future of work. We
mhm,
could talk about the future of civility.
mhm,
With respect to, I know something that's on your mind is this information warfare. We
mhm.
can talk about you personally, right? Where you see yourself in the next 12 months. Um, and we could even talk about this backlash, right? I mean, right now on HBO, there is fake famous, there is, the social dilemma. There could also be this complete swing back to being outside, to being present. I mean, this might be a little bit wishful, but with all this literacy and this level playing field, maybe, just maybe, people might be woken up from their slumber, which is and their slave, being a slave to technology. So, where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about work? Do you want to
Yeah,
talk about
let's talk about, let's get through the bad stuff first. I'm going to tell you where I think a lot of this stuff could go wrong if you're interested. And then
sure?
maybe we'll spin around I think the positive side of it, which I think could which I'd much rather live people with a positive aftertaste after potentially scaring the hell out of them for a while.
All right, we'll go from ugly to bad to good. We'll
Yeah,
work
we go. I don't
backwards.
want people after a late night show, kind of rocking themselves to sleep in bed tonight when I totally freak them
Well,
out.
with you
So
with that smile, I mean, with that smile, let me tell you, you're the kind of guy that's going to tell you to go to hell, and you'll look forward to the journey. So
like, this is gonna be delicious. Let's go to hell together.
let's do it.
Yay! Um, so let me tell you the bit that I'm really freaked out by right now. And again, like you said, I'm an old school digital guy. I guess I'm probably as close to an old school version of Generation C. I've been on, I could hand build a computer by the time I was 7. I
Right.
mean, I've really been living this stuff for a long time. And uh, the thing that really freaks me out right now, and I don't want to be super clear. I don't want this is not a. I want to stay far away from politics. But there's certain this kind of information warfare that I'm seeing right now. Certainly impacts things like politics and impacts all kinds of social issues. The thing that I'm seeing a lot of is as we all get increasingly connected, there is such an easy ability to disseminate fake information. There is, through fake profiles, through fake content sites, and even through simulated videos through things like deepfakes, where, you can now, I mean, I've got, mobile apps that I can point at my face and, insert myself into major movie scenes, and it looks amazing. And they're doing it in near real time. So the point anyway, again, is this, just this huge democratization of these really powerful simulation technologies. Now, the bit that freaks me out is how they're being applied. So I happen to read a lot of news. This is one of my addictions. I consume a lot of different news, and worth noting, I lived in Shanghai at one point, and I find, and while I was there, I found reading their news through a translation service pretty fascinating, because I started kind of going, man, it's amazing how one story, the same story about one subject that, yeah, I think is based on a number of facts, can be told so differently from different sources of information, or from different sources. So then I started reading multiple different news sites, across all forms of the spectrum, left leaning, right leaning, center news facts, whatever. I just wanted to see how different things could be told differently. First off, you find some pretty major slants there, and I think a lot of us know that's out there. But what really starts freaking me out is, because I'm a horrible masochist, I like reading the comments section. And then I started realizing, it's like, well, what percentage of these are fake bots? And by the way, I'm going to openly admit something on your show. In the mid 2000s, we were creating fake profiles to use it to seed viral campaigns, and we had hundreds of social profiles that we had created at my old agency to try and seed out. I mean, we were having a lot of fun with it. We were using it to promote, Coca-Cola and Mini Cooper and, Toyota and Guinness and things like that. But the point is, this concept of fake profiles has been around for a long time, and I know firsthand how easy it is to get away with them. So then you start realizing, it's like, well, what percentage of these bots or these users here are commenting are fake, you know? And then there's like, how many of them are just trolls? How many of them are actually from potentially foreign governments or political groups, or frankly, even businesses, brands trying to shift social perception? And then you start realizing how hard it is to control all of this stuff, and then of course, then there's this feedback loop where you start distrusting all information online. And you get into things like, and then it gets the reverse challenge, where who are we to control free speech online? Who are you to tell me what's true and not true? So then there's the counterbalance of regulation you're seeing to try and protect people from this stuff. And it really puts me personally in a quandary, because I believe in free speech, but I also don't believe in freely allowing people to be manipulated by foreign parties. So it's a really tricky spot. All I can tell you is, I don't think our society is better than it was 5 years ago because of this. And I think nuclear weapons may be very scary, but no one's going to fire nukes off because it's a nuclear deterrent. We all have them, and they're traceable. But I think what is happening right now, people using information warfare against our society, and I'm half English, half American. I'm talking about, like, both of those societies. Um, it's terrifying. It scares the hell out of me. It's some of the damage that's been done to our society through this kind of work over the last couple of years, I think, is as damaging as a nuclear weapon in many regards, because of the lasting impact I'm sure it's caused on our countries.
I found this quote for you today. We always have a quote of the episode, and this was yours, Freddie. All warfare is based on deception, and that
Love
was
that.
said by, do you know which president of the United States? I'm kidding. It wasn't any president of the United States. This was
I was going
Sun
to say
Tzu.
Sun Tzu. I did not think it was a president. I was like,
No,
I was like, unless they were quoting Sun Tzu.
no,
So,
President Tzu,
yeah,
different
yeah,
country.
exactly.
But but
I love that quote. Yeah.
I think when we think about your subject, right? To me, there are two thoughts. One is about trust. Who do you trust? What can you trust? You certainly can trust your spouse. You hope you can trust your friends. Hopefully, we can trust each other. Um, and then the other one is, what is real and what is not. My youngest son keeps reminding me that we're living in a simulation right now. Speaking of VR and the Matrix, and sometimes I think, I remember being addicted, and I will use the word addicted to news during the last political cycle and the last 12 months.
Yeah, I had
Addicted
to
to
actually
CNN.
actively put a blocker on my browser that stopped me from visiting news sites from 9 to 5
Addicted, but
p.m.
I would say addicted. 4 to 6 hours, maybe 6 to 8 hours of CNN a day. And my point is, whether it was CNN or it doesn't matter. Even
Yeah,
it was split. And now maybe 5 minutes, if that. And you
yeah,
know
I've
what?
had to cut it off for myself
I'm
because it was making me
happier.
unhappy.
I'm
I agree.
happier. And you know what? I am, if it can be said, I'm blissfully ignorant in one sense. I'm not ignorant, but I guess I just choose to focus my life on the things that I can control. And it's almost like maybe this is the answer, Freddie, or at least an answer, I should say, which is a hyper local commitment. Focus on your town, focus on your neighborhood, focus on your neighbors, focus on yourself, right? Focus on your community and build up from there. And I do say, and I'm a little mindful of the fact that, without citizens being able to mobilize, without the power of, it's not just our vote, but it's actually being able to effect and mobilize change. But on the other hand, I think that life is so short. We waste so much time and energy on that which we cannot change, that we cannot influence. So why try?
True. It's funny. I try to apply that to my own life in terms of not letting myself obsess on things I can't do anything about and fix the things I can. Um, I probably should have followed that advice earlier, and maybe it's because I did try. Maybe I'm thinking out loud here, but I think I foolishly inserted myself into many online conversation, trying to be the reasonable middle person to help people see each other's point of view, but things just seem to be a little too heated out there. But I also think a lot of people just need to disconnect a little bit more, and not get not get fed by the crazy machine, the information machine that's out there. Um, because I think it can be unhealthy.
Well,
On a
let's,
cheerful note,
yeah.
I think there's a lot of very positive things that can come out of this, and although I get very concerned about some of the implications of our hyper-connected world and what that might mean, for everyday citizens like you and I. When I do start thinking about the very positive side of this, uh, as an example, look, I've been completely remote for 5 years. I haven't, been into an office in that time. Yes, I go travel and work with some of my clients and partners from time to time, but most of my life I measure on a very simple happiness meter, and that happiness meter is how many days in a row can I wear shorts. And that means that typically that for me means I didn't have to get on an airplane and go visit someone. Obviously, that was about 365 days if you looked at the last 12 months. But before that, it was more about how long could I go? And if it wasn't for you know digital technologies enabling a kind of a new way of working, and most importantly, I think this kind of paradigm shift that's happening right now, where other people are going, yeah, man, if you want to work that way, cool, no problem, it's not weird anymore. There's been a sea change, and you could argue that mass acceptance being the key word, happened
Mm.
in the last 12 months. People go, yeah, I know people that remote work, but if you did a poll, and this is, I'm going to make some very unscientific statements here, but I'm quite confident that if you looked last year, less and potentially far less than 50% of people said this is a perfectly acceptable way of where to work. And I would argue that if you redid that poll today, as a betting man, I'd say far more than 50. I don't know if it's far more, but I'm going to go with more than 50. Think that remote work, would be their primary. I'd be very comfortable with it being their primary way of working moving forward.
So, by the way, a little segue. Glenn, who's been a regular on the show, he says, "Sorry, Joseph, the 9 p.m. doesn't work for me because I work all day and relax at night." I'll watch them the day after. Can I convince you to return to daytime? And then he said, sorry to miss Sir Freddie. Well, Glenn, first of all, are you not entertained? Are you not are you not relaxed except for the last 5 minutes? But the most important thing is remember that this is all available via the long tail and on demand. So you never have to miss a single second of the show. But Glenn, get a glass of whatever it is. It could be don't not coffee because you want to relax. Kool-Aid, Jaffe juice,
Yeah,
whatever.
never go wrong with a little Jaffe juice.
There's nothing wrong with that. But it's so interesting to me because we've discussed two things, right? We've discussed this idea of trust. We've discussed happiness. We've discussed Generation C. We're discussing wearing shorts. We're discussing this idea of remote working. The fact is, we ain't going back to the old way of living, of transacting, of working, etc. But the but what you're doing with the Chameleon Collective, this began. How many years have you been doing this now? Five or
Just over 5, and it was pretty much a reaction to me being completely sick of corporate life and never wanting to start another company again or come along get all the stress that comes along with starting another business, which of course turned into me starting another business, but it's a very, 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 very different kind of organization than I've ever been involved in before.
so give us the elevator pitch about this new way to work, this new way to collaborate.
So
Because I mean, for me, it's just been it's 1,000. It's just bullseye.
so I don't even want to tell people what the company does. I don't think that it matters. It could be, we're a consulting firm. We do some recruiting work, we do some interim leadership work, but none of that matters. What is different about Chameleon Collective is that effectively the core principles of what the business is. Um, the company is basically a company in service to the people in it versus a bunch of people in service to a company. So, as a very simple premise, that completely flips everything on its head. Even the way that our financial incentives are designed, the company, as crazy as this may sound, is not designed to make money at the center. The company is designed to make money for everyone in Chameleon Collective. And so what I'm finding is that when you look at this kind of rise of the gig economy, um, that yes, that was wonderful. It democratized access to work and allowed people with certain expertises to get matched with people who needed those services and enabled a bunch of people to work remotely and kind of live and work on their terms. But then it didn't. And what I mean by that is, there are a lot of great things that exist about a regular company. There's the community, the peer group, the infrastructure that comes along with that. If you've been working on Madison Avenue or whatever you want to call it, a big Fortune 5,000, 500 or Fortune 1000 for years, there are certain things that happen for you at that company that you get really, really used to. And frankly, even the earning level. And so what we've effectively done is built a company that takes all the best parts that we like about a big traditional company, the infrastructure, the peer group, even the access to clients and talent, and then kind of merged it with the best part of being an entrepreneur, which I would argue is controlling your own destiny, picking and choosing the kind of people you want to work with, who you want to work for, even how you want to work. And we found a compromise between those two things. And it doesn't feel quite like a normal company because it's hyper entrepreneurial, but it's a hell of a lot scarier than being out there on your own and being an entrepreneur too. And Chameleon Collective kind of sits right in between these two things. Um, we're at 93 people. It's grown. We grew 47% last year. We're trending over 50% again this year. We have some very significant clients. And I've never really been involved with anything like it. It's the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. And I'm learning which is counterintuitive in full transparency to every business I've ever been involved in the past, that the more I give away, the more I get. And so by creating this infrastructure, worth noting, by the way, completely decentralized, it has no formal hierarchy like a traditional company. That kind of giving away power or giving away the profit to the people within the company, hey, shocker, that turns to be a honey pot to attract really high end talent. There's a lot of really high performing, really quote unquote badass people out there that go set off to be independent consultants or be independent contractors because they want to control their own destiny. They want to maximize their earning potential. But that can actually turn out to be kind of scary. So if you take away the hierarchy, so they're still their own boss, you take away, that everyone's got to chip in some money to some guy or some group of people, and you allow them to put the money they've earned back in their pocket, you're going to attract some really, really high performing talent.
It is.
You
It
know,
is. In a way, I guess you're kind of like the you're the crypto company. You're the blockchain
I've heard
company.
people say, you refer to us like this. It's this kind of like decentralized company,
It's a lot of the
but
same values. It's a lot,
yeah,
but there's another one as well, which of course, you'll be very familiar with, which is we capitalism versus me capitalism. And why I love that juxtaposition is we're still putting capitalism front and center. We're just flipping one letter. That's all from, and
our,
everything you
our
need to know is
our
right
our
in front of
our
you.
number one, we have a list of like core values that we look for in people when we invite people to join Chameleon Collective. The number one, if I had to name it, was we look for people that are more about the we than they are about the me. And so a lot of times we like people that maybe had some great success in their life. I've had some lucky wins along the way, but I also I'm also at a point where, like, as smart as I may be every once in a while, there's no way I'm smarter than the whole collective. And that's, we actually tend to like people that have kind of screwed it up at least once, because those people, I think, I've been humbled enough to realize, like, you're never going to be as smart as a whole bunch of badasses. At my old agency, which again, credible moment in my life, we had a lot of amazing people there, but there was effectively a top of the hierarchy. It's classic hierarchical structure. There was a group of two, three, four, whatever it is, like really, really you know uh high power people, and then everyone else kind of laddered up into them. And because of our non-hierarchical structure, I'd say Chameleon Collective has at least 30 people of that level, in a similar sized organization. That would never work in a traditional hierarchy. You'd say that that concept is top heavy, but it works for us because we have no hierarchy.
I mean,
Worth
there's
noting, by
so
the way, when you don't have a method of uh, hierarchy, and people aren't wrangling to get up and up the ranks or being afraid of being demoted down the ranks, huge implications for the company's culture. I didn't think it was possible to run a company this way, but now I couldn't imagine running a company any other way.
I mean, there's so much to talk about. There is a spring in your step. There is a twinkle in your eye. I mean, you can just see the joy. You can just see the happiness.
Happier. One chameleon, which is what we call our people, said once, I work at a company with no employees and no bosses. And I thought that was really interesting. But you know, what do we all crave when we work with folks? We just want people to be self-accountable. We want people to be reliable. We need people that self-manage. I think when you work in a non-hierarchical structure, you have to have people that can self-manage. You have to have people that can problem solve themselves. If they don't, it just doesn't work. So we just avoid those people. If you need a manager, like Chameleon Collective is not a good place for you. And so imagine having a company of 90 plus people that all know how to wipe their own ass, and how liberating that must be when you just go, yeah, I don't get stressed about anything because I know everyone's going to take care of it, and get it done. And I
I mean,
just I love it.
y-
I
you
just
know,
never, I'm busy as hell, and I'm stressed with my amount of work I have on my plate sometimes, but I don't feel the kind of annoyed stress that I think I used to feel trying to manage, a normal organization, let's call
Well,
it.
well, and here's the thing. In addition to everything, you're also a fellow streamie, and you've got the O Ship, show, which I absolutely love. I mean, when I saw you doing it, I was like, what do you know? Who do I have to sleep with to get a, to become a guest on the show? And of course, lucky for me, I was a guest on the show, although I have no idea what the hell is going on with that beard. This was probably at my lowest, or at my, I am already ugly, but I mean, I took ugly to. I think you're actually sneering at me in in that image. You're like,
I
what?
think it was. I assumed it was your band stage. You had a little side band thing going. It's all good.
But if you guys want to, this show, I believe it's Thursday, right?
Yeah, yeah, every Thursday. And
Every
we're also tinkering around with doing some end of day and some in the morning, but I think the next one's 11 a.m. Eastern this week.
just 9 p.m. is my time. Do not come for me. I will take you down.
I will not. I will openly swear an honor to avoid the 9 p.m. time slot
Well,
for you.
Glenn is apparently avoiding the 9 p.m. time slot as well. Um, Freddie,
Well, Glenn will have to take it afterwards.
yeah, Glenn is going to be your newest viewer. And we can say whatever we want about Glenn because he's fast asleep right now.
Yeah, done. Glenn's dead to me anyway. He was so yesterday now.
It sounds like almost like Pulp Fiction. Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead. You know, in the last minute or two, I think we've kind of done this beautiful transition thinking about all these changes, but I would love for you to just spend a couple minutes talking about yourself, talking about your priorities. Where do you see yourself in 12 months' time? Because it's clear that you're still evolving, you're still learning, you're still having fun. So what are some of the changes that have affected you, are affecting you, or will affect you in terms of what's important to you, how you live your life, how you interact, how you transact with people?
I'm gonna answer that, and then I want to make sure I'm gonna throw it out before I forget. I want to make sure we go back. You talked earlier on about eulogy facts, and I have a interesting eulogy challenge for you that I think you'll find really interesting. But we'll go back to that in a minute. Um, Look, as far as what I think is next for me over the next 12 months. Um, first off, I'm frankly just looking forward to going outside again. My mom's 83 years old. She lives at home with my wife and I. Obviously she's high risk, and I've been doing my best to kind of look after her. Now we're very much looking forward to kind of now everyone's kind of pricked up, if you want to call it, I can go out there and kind of start engaging in the normal world again. So number one thing I'm doing, frankly, is planning my next holiday. Really, really, really hoping I can go somewhere fun. I'm thinking about doing a little stint in Europe with some other friends. Um, but I think the other thing, is a little bit about what you were talking about earlier, which is after a year that was so digitally intense. I've always been online a lot, but I've never done everything through online, from my drinks with my friends to, all my business, you know what I mean? Like versus the odd flight and going and spending time with people in
Right.
person. I think I'm looking forward to disconnecting a little bit. I think the real question is, I don't think in my case it's going to be like some rubber band that I'm going to revert to some non-digital form because I don't think I've ever had a non-digital form in my entire life. But I think I'm looking forward just to spending some time connecting with people, IRL in real life, uh,
Disconnect to connect,
disconnect.
or disconnect to reconnect.
Yeah. Worth noting when I go on vacation, and again, I consider myself kind of a hyper connected individual, for better or worse. When I go on holiday, I basically put my phone in my safe or whatever in the hotel room, if I'm in a hotel, where I just I lock it someplace in a drawer, and I go like off the grid completely. People go, how do you take photos? I like to take photos. I keep my good camera, and I normally hang it around my neck, and I don't. Another thing nice thing about getting older, I don't care if I look like a nerd, and I walk around my Canon hanging off my neck the whole time, but I just disconnect from the phone because I'm actually not capable of ignoring the beeps and the buzzes and the notifications, or even if I turn all those off, I'll start reading the news or something, and I just need to get away from it, you know. So yeah, so that's going to be me for the next 12 months. I can't
All
wait.
right, I like that. I'll you know, I'm ready to sip that pina colada with you on the beach.
Perfect.
All right, so you wanted to in our final moments talk about the eulogy.
Yeah, so this happened to me when actually, since you had mentioned my father earlier, when my father passed away, I got asked to handle his funeral affairs. And so my father had a funeral in the Bahamas where he lived. He had one in Miami where he had a huge group of friends, and he had another one in the UK. So I had to do the funeral thing three times for my father. So I became a weird expert in funerals that I didn't really want to be at that period in my life. And he was not a religious man. I'm not a particularly religious man. And you don't I was in my mid to late 20s, trying to understand how to put this thing, put a funeral together. I didn't know what to do. And then that made me really reflective on, like, God, what if I died tomorrow? Like, what would I want my funeral, my eulogy, or that kind of period of my life to be? And so, you heard me mention earlier that I really, 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 really love music. And so I came up with an idea that I've challenged a bunch of people around the world to do, and I've had now dozens of people actually complete this challenge. And I said, look, if I died tomorrow, I would want everyone to get together and listen to the soundtrack of my life. And I would want people to listen to a playlist that I would create. Maybe this is the DJ in me coming out again. And I would serve great booze, and I would want people not to talk for, like, the period of this playlist, and listen to this and really truly listen to what I define as the soundtrack of my life. Now, I use tape rules. You know what tape rules are? Has to be under 90 minutes. Can't flip the tape two times, two sides, 45 minutes aside. And what's interesting about that is when you force yourself to keep it under 90 minutes, that's when you really have to start being like, what are the music that truly defines my life? And otherwise, you just start bugging loads of stuff on, and you end up with these 17-hour playlists that we all make on Spotify and things. So, I ended up making that. I found it to be incredibly therapeutic and realizing what I really connected to. And I told other people that really love music about this. And I can't tell you how many people have literally either, some of them said it took them 2 years to do it, 3 years. So that, I finally did it. It took me 3 years, but I wanted to send it to you. And on a side note, I've gotten some great playlists from people. Yeah, so that's what I think about when I think about epitaphs, headstones, and eulogies. I think about my eulogy playlist.
Freddie Laker, the soundtrack to your life is not done just yet. Carl Sean Watkins says, hello, Joseph Jaffe and Freddie Laker, just dropping by to show some love and enjoying such a great discussion. And says, this is so wonderful. He's sharing. We are playing out to not something that will be on your epitaph, your eulogy, your soundtrack. This is a freebie. This does not count as part of the 90 minutes. Freddie, it was a real pleasure hanging out with you tonight. I'm glad you stayed awake. You can connect with Freddie on LinkedIn. You can follow the Chameleons on Twitter. And of course, listen to O-Ship.
Yeah, I hope to see you at O-Ship sometime.
You will be glad you did. Freddie, have a great evening. And if you've watched the show, you know how we end the show with the one and only Mr. Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go.
I'll take it.
We'll be back tomorrow night. Take care, everyone. Thank you again, Freddie. Good night.
Thanks so much. I had a great time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.